And I expect nothing less from Amy Keating Rogers. The Lost Treasure of Griffonstone, was it? It was so just wow, you know? I just got finished watching it and I am surprised. I'm impressed. I mean, I honestly didn't expect that. The pacing wasn't terrible, and the characters were well portrayed, although I did have some questioning about Gilda's portrayal near the end. But, as I always expect from Amy Keating Rogers, Pinkie Pie was portrayed fantastically. In fact, I can say that it's one of the best episodes in terms of Pinkie Pie's portrayal that I've seen for a long time. In fact, I'm going to be honest, the reason why, or one of the reasons why, Amy Keating Rogers is one of my favorite writers on the team is because she knows how to write Pinkie Pie. And it's so hard for some of the other writers to do that. I mean, for example, I can name a whole bunch of times after Season 1 where Pinkie Pie was just plain annoying. In Season 1, Pinkie Pie was excited and she was, you know, the element of laughter. She was excited, she was happy, and she was bubbly, and she was friendly, but she wasn't annoying. That's the one thing that she was not in Season 1. In fact, coincidentally, Griffin the Brush-Off is a great example of what I'm talking about. Pinkie Pie, through the entire thing, remained very friendly, very in-your-face, very happy and bubbly, but she had a personality and she wasn't too incredibly annoying. On the other hand, I can give you a whole bunch of instances after Season 1 where her character became very annoying.
Hold on a second!
But Amy Keating Rogers, most of the time, nails Pinkie Pie's personality, and I'm usually very satisfied with it whenever it's written. With Amy Keating Rogers episodes, I find that sometimes if Pinkie Pie doesn't sound in character, I feel like it has more to do with the voice acting. No offense to Andrea Libman, she's great. But I always find that the script itself, that the writing, is very spot on. And I feel like I'm gonna really miss Amy Keating Rogers for that reason as well, because darn, no one can pull off Pinkie Pie like she can. Well, maybe Josh Haber, because he seems to be able to pull off some character personalities really well. I haven't had any complaints with his personality portrayal yet, but anyway. So aside from that, here's an episode where we get to see Griffins. Griffins have been long sought after. Everyone has been, well, not long sought after, but everybody has been really excited to see Griffins. All we saw with Griffins was Gilda in Season 1, and then after a while during the Equestria Games we saw more Griffins competing, but we never really get to see much about them. So to finally be able to delve into the lore, the living space, the personalities, and the designs and everything like that of Griffins is a huge step forward. A huge step forward for the fans, a huge step forward for the series in general. I have to say, I was very interested in this episode because there's so many juicy things you can take from it. There's so much information lining the out and inside of this episode that it's hard to pass up talking about it. The fact that Twilight couldn't come along was one of the things that I felt bad for. I felt like she wanted to see this place so badly, and she couldn't even come along. And, during the part where Rainbow Dash decides to leave Pinkie by herself, I figured Twilight would have easily cleared this up by either telling Rainbow Dash to come with them, or taking Pinkie Pie with her and maybe knowing where the library was. Now, it ended up working out just fine without her, and for a reason, but I feel like Twilight would have, I don't know, given a little bit more leadership to the mission and everything. But hey, in the end, I'm really glad that she wasn't there. The dynamics between Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash are also really great, as we've seen in Griffin the Brush-Off, again, coincidentally. Although, I can't really say it's a coincidence. The writers probably did that on purpose, you know, to make sure that Gilda gets to be friends with Dash and gets to make up with Pinkie Pie. I'll admit, I am not a big Gilda fan. I never have been. I've seen some people that liked Gilda, but personally I've never been into her, and it's not because of what she did to Fluttershy. It's just because I've never really been into jerks, to put it bluntly. But I've never hated Gilda either. But before getting into Gilda, I'm just gonna get into Griffonstone and Griffins as a whole. First of all, I really like the layout of the town of Griffins. I like the fact that it's perched up really high to, you know, reference the fact that they're part eagle. I like the fact that all of the houses are sort of nests and everything. I like the bird-like atmosphere to all of it. And everybody always said just because Gilda's a jerk doesn't mean all Griffins are jerks, and I agreed. In fact, I would defend that statement. But one of the most interesting discoveries that came from this episode is the fact that that statement was incorrect. Turns out most Griffins are jerks, and to this day, apparently, they have always been very greedy. Now, I hope to see that change in the future ever since Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie have been there. But it turns out that calling all Griffins rude isn't really a racist statement as much as I thought it was. Griffins are actually greedy and selfish, and, well, I guess we were wrong. But I mean, we were right to assume that they weren't all that way. After all, there's no need to be racist. Of course, this does mean that it's only the ones from Griffonstone. After all, there might be other areas where Griffins reside that isn't Griffonstone, where they might have a better idea of what friendship is or whatever, or how to treat people a little bit more respectfully. Or how to treat ponies, whatever. Another thing about Griffonstone is the lore. We get more pony lore to add to our pony history books. We now know about Griffonstone's old king. We now know about the big beast that, I don't know, stole the stone from them. I can't remember what it was called. Now we know more Griffin history. Or, well, now we know Griffin history in general. I mean, we never really got anything until now. And that's important. Speaking of which, I kind of figured that this was going to be the monster that the main six were fighting in the next episode. But I guess, wow, okay, I guess not. Now, last but certainly not least, Gilda. As I said, I'm not a fan of Gilda, or at least I haven't really been. But for some reason, I still found her return exciting. I actually expected to see Gilda there. It dawned on me while they were walking through that we were probably going to see Gilda, and surely enough we did. I kind of wondered if they had a new voice actor for her, but later on I realized maybe they didn't. I don't know, maybe it was just me. But, of course, she was a jerk, like always. And who knew she baked? Or, well, who knew she tried to bake? Another thing is, don't ask me how a little bit of baking soda turned those into those. Really, I'm not even sure how that works. I guess Pinkie Pie might have spiffed them up a bit. I don't know. Leave it to Pinkie Pie to randomly carry around baking soda. Or baking powder. I thought it was baking soda. Anyway. The best part about Gilda's appearance, though, is that we got to give her character more depth. We got to see a little bit of when Gilda and Rainbow Dash were young. We got to see, for the very first time, a little tiny child Griffin. And Gilda, of all of them. We also got to hear Gilda's voice when she was little and how she acted. She seemed a lot less like a jerk back then, a lot less tainted by the world around her. Also, I had never guessed that Gilda's only friend was Rainbow Dash. I just figured that she'd go on with her life wherever she was, and that Rainbow Dash would just get out of her life. She might become some kind of future antagonist. But it turns out she really didn't have any friends here in Griffonstone, and it's obvious why. But this scene right here is where I thought, aww.
I did have a friend once, but you saw how that turned out.
Gilda really did care about Rainbow Dash, you know? Gilda tried to make friends. Maybe she knew back in Griffonstone that she didn't really have many friends. Maybe she already was alone and everything, and once Rainbow Dash sort of showed her friendship, then she really enjoyed it. And maybe that's why she went to visit Rainbow Dash. Obviously, her and Dash were close. In fact, that might actually give reason to why she was so mean to Pinkie Pie. It could have been a type of jealousy. After her heart was hardened, I guess, by Griffonstone and its, I don't know, strange culture, Gilda still remained friends with Rainbow Dash even after she became a jerk. And she wasn't going to be a jerk to her friend Rainbow Dash, well...
Well, you are such a flip-flop! Cool 1 minute and lame the next. When you decide not to be lame anymore, give me a call.
Anyway, as I was saying, it was all, from the beginning, just jealousy. There was actually something behind all of the rudeness. I mean, granted, she was probably used to treating everyone like trash to begin with, but her little thing with Pinkie Pie and Griffin the Brush-Off seems to have been just a fit of jealousy because she didn't want Rainbow Dash to be sitting there hanging with Pinkie Pie when she was around. She wanted her time with Rainbow Dash by herself. Or at least she wanted to sort of be the focus of Rainbow Dash's day for the most part or whatever. It just boils down to jealousy. At least that's my take on it. And now that we know that, that's a little bit more depth to add to her character. She's not just a jerk for no reason. She's a jerk because she was taught to be, and she was a jerk to Pinkie Pie due to jealousy. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm thinking, you know? Now, I did find it a little bit unnatural how quickly she changed in the end. Not only that, but her voice just stopped getting raspy. It was an overall turnaround. It was almost as sappy as Sunset Shimmer finally turning to good by the end of the Equestria Girls movie. That was the cheesiest thing I have ever seen in My Little Pony. I mean, the thing is, I don't know if somebody can lose their pride so quickly. I mean, let's be realistic. Yes, we are being realistic in a show about talking magical ponies. In Griffin the Brush-Off, you could tell that she had some kind of ego about her, that all she wanted to do, you know, she sort of wanted to be cool, and that she wasn't even in front of Rainbow Dash while they were laughing and talking with each other. She still had that cool and smooth air about her, you know? Like she was a bit prideful, or, as I said, she had some sort of ego. And that was while her and Rainbow Dash were still friends and were still sort of palling around. But suddenly, in this episode, after all of this, she drops it. Her ego disappears entirely. And that just doesn't happen in the real world. I mean, I can imagine her ego dying down a lot, but it literally dropped off the face of the earth. It was just gone. One moment, she's just like in Griffin the Brush-Off, yeah, guys, you just need to leave, okay? You know, stuff like that, and probably I can imagine her saying, that's not my style, you know? But at the end, my gosh, she really did a 180. She was talking to them without any kind of ego at all. Look.
I'm really sorry about how I treated you two. Nothing's better than gold to a Griffin. She was really weirded out until I gave her the scone. Then she tried it and said it tasted good. What? You want me to spread friendship here by myself? How am I supposed to do that? I haven't even made one single friend yet. But you'll come back and visit, right?
And then she said it tasted good. That's the first nice thing a Griffin's ever said to me. Okay, I know the Griffins are jerks, but it seems so unrealistic for that to be the first nice thing ever said to her, especially something that small. Then again, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, the Griffins, well, they are jerks. And I guess in their cold culture, it's probably everyone for themselves. So I guess when I think about it, it's not impossible, but you'd think that she would grow up more depressed. Or no, I guess that's why she grew up angry. So I guess it all fits. But back on topic. Gilda's ego dropped and stayed dropped, just out of thin air. I mean, aside from that though, the episode was really good, and I'm really happy that it aired. And it's a great episode to have right before the release of episode 100. As far as I know, though, there's going to be a 2-week gap, so we will have to go 2 weeks without seeing another episode of My Little Pony. But I'm sure we can survive by then. I'm going to find something to do, and you guys are going to find something to do, and we're just all going to find something to do. So I'll catch you guys next time. Just leave your suggestions and your comments and your agreements or disagreements below, because I really like to hear your thoughts. If there's anything I forgot to say, oh well. I'm not gonna do this again. So anyway, I hope you liked the video and have an awesome week.